The Stapleton name scraped off the community that clung to its KKK-linked name, only to abandon it over the weekend. Denver Mayor Stapleton was tight with the Klan because the Klan ran Colorado. It's history worth re-examining. Former Governor Hickenlooper apologizes for an ancient slave ship comment. Any day on the campaign trail that you're apologizing for a slave ship comment is not a good day on the campaign trail. LGBTQ Americans get the same protections that exist in Colorado. Gatherings of hundreds of people will be allowed in our state's next step as neighboring states backslide in the fight against coronavirus. And next viewers piled up a mountain of $5 donations to make a real impact for a nonprofit mentoring young men in our community. That's next. The Stapleton name is being scraped off the signs today, and that neighborhood doesn't even have a new name yet. They clearly are not messing around. The association that runs the neighborhood announced abruptly over the weekend that they are ditching that name after years of refusals to part with it, even after the links to the KKK became well known. They made the announcement yesterday. Signs change today, meeting Wednesday, start talking about new names. It'll be up to the association's community delegation to officially vote to remove the Stapleton name and to pick the new one. Stapleton, of course, is named like the airport that preceded it on that land for former Denver Mayor Benjamin Stapleton, who was a member of the KKK. He was elected during a time when that hate group held tremendous political power in our state. Our Steve Steger offers up an uncomfortable history lesson.
I was always amazed that the Stapleton airport would be named Stapleton after a member of the Klan, after a Klan mayor.
University of Utah history professor Bob Goldberg lived in Denver, literally writing the book on the Klan's influence here.
In my mind, the Colorado Klan was the second most powerful clavering or organization in the United States in the 1920s, only after Indiana.
Goldberg says the Colorado Klan gained its power mainly during the 1920s, when the Klan was as close as it ever would be to mainstream.
Was anti-African American. It was for white supremacy, but its larger proponents, its larger issues were in regard to Catholics, Jews, immigrants, and the issue of law and order. And based on that cafeteria of appeals, the Klan was able to attract many, many people.
As many as 35,000 people in Colorado were KKK members. He says half of them in Denver. Goldberg described this Klan as a hateful economic machine that provided stickers for Protestant-owned businesses, encouraging Klansmen to shop there. And in 1924, he described a powerful political machine that influenced the election of a governor, lieutenant governor, most statewide office holders, a U.S. senator, and most city leaders, regardless of party.
The Klan would vote in bloc for a candidate. As John Galen Locke, the Grand Dragon of the Colorado Klan, said, "We are not Republicans, we are not Democrats, we are Klansmen." And you were expected to vote the Klan ticket.
Photos from the Denver Public Library show how absurdly mainstream it was, from a huge meeting with a burning cross atop Table Mountain in Golden to a Klan day at the Overland Park racetrack. Eventually, political scandal would take the Klan's influence away by the mid-20s, though Goldberg says he believes some of that era still reverberates today.
And the echoes I hear today are very similar in regard to who is considered insiders and who are considered outsiders, who are considered Americans and whose Americanism is tainted.
And while the Klan gained a bit of political legitimacy there for that brief period in the 20s, scholars say it wasn't any less hateful at that period. And ironically, the Klan's leadership, who portrayed themselves as advocates for law and order, then proceeded to get involved in numerous public scandals, accused of breaking the law, and that is what led the KKK back into the shadows where they mostly remain today. Kyle.
Not hate, it was ethics. It was bad government that led to their downfall in Colorado.
It was. It was bad examples in that case because they portrayed themselves as law and order advocates, but the Grand Dragon at the time in the 1920s got in trouble for things like tax evasion. He got in trouble for attempted assault on someone, and these are leaders who were trying to, at the time, portray themselves as the law and order advocates in the state of Colorado.
Who would have thought? Grand Dragon of KKK, not a good dude. Baffling. All right. Thank you, Steve. So the Stapleton family name, still well known in Colorado, generations after Mayor Benjamin Stapleton. You probably know Stapleton's great-grandson, Walker Stapleton. He was the Republican nominee for Colorado governor in 2018, lost to Democrat Jared Polis. Walker Stapleton tweeted out yesterday that if changing the name of the Stapleton neighborhood brings more equity and fairness for Denverites, then he said he supports it. The Stapleton family continues to try and get the family name on the downtown YMCA. Jen Stapleton, Walker's wife, runs the foundation on behalf of the family. That foundation pledged $1 million over 5 years to renovate the downtown Y, and part of the proposal was that the building would be named after Benjamin Stapleton Jr., Mayor Stapleton's son, Walker's grandfather. Family says that those plans are still a go. We reached out to the YMCA on this and have yet to hear back. As Colorado re-examines the historical figures that we choose to honor publicly, Denver City Councilman Chris Hines suggests that we ought to rethink having statues celebrating Christopher Columbus, like the one that is in Denver Civic Center Park. Both Denver and Colorado have officially stopped celebrating Columbus Day, replaced it with Indigenous Peoples Day and Cabrini Day. I've been by that statue 50 times. I had no idea it was Columbus. Councilman Hines says some people see Christopher Columbus as a sign of oppression and destruction of one culture by another. Councilman says the conversation on whether to remove his statues is past due. Denver School Board Director Tay Anderson helped lead Black Lives Matter protests in the streets in recent weeks. He warned that he would bring one to the Stapleton neighborhood right before they announced that they would change the name. And today, Anderson drew public attention to a years-old comment by former governor, now Democratic Senate candidate, John Hickenlooper.
If I was to describe a scheduler, a political scheduler, imagine an ancient slave ship with the guy with the whip, and you're rowing. We elected officials are the ones that are rowing.
Hickenlooper offered this apology today, saying, quote, "Taking a look at this video from 6 years ago, I recognize that my comments were painful. I did not intend them to be. I offer my deepest apologies." Director Anderson, who's a supporter of Hickenlooper's primary opponent, Andrew Romanoff, said the apology wasn't enough, said that Hickenlooper should commit to equity and implicit bias training. Governor Jared Polis today announced some new reopening guidelines, new public health guidelines as the state continues to combat coronavirus. These new directives would allow for gatherings up to 100 people at indoor events in the largest rooms with proper spacing. Bars would be able to open up at 25% capacity, or up to 50 people. Overnight camps would also be allowed to open up with social distancing restrictions. The guidelines are in draft form now. There's 2 days of comment. They expect to finalize them by the end of the week. And the state is preparing for the next phase in which community by community, outdoor events up to 500 people would be allowed, like a concert or a county fair, if those communities can show that they are controlling the spread of the virus and have the ability to handle a surge. There used to be a day when you could be fired from your job just for being gay. That day was yesterday. Not today, though, as the United States Supreme Court ruled that LGBTQ Americans are protected from discrimination in employment. Conservatives joined with liberals on the court in a 6-3 decision that the part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that bars job discrimination because of things like sex protects gay, lesbian, and transgender employees. Conservative Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch of Colorado wrote for the majority. One Colorado, which is an LGBTQ rights group here in Colorado, had been hopeful that Gorsuch might shock the world by siding with them.
We just really understood his perspective, knowing that, where he went to church played a really important role in his thinking. When we know that the most powerful thing for folks when making decisions like this is it's important to know someone who is LGBTQ. And so perhaps knowing that he went to an open and affirming church was really important in his thinking about recognizing that LGBTQ people were at his house of worship.
Colorado already had the workplace protections for the LGBTQ community that are now going to be the law nationwide. Police reform, to-go booze, old school license plates, few of the highlights, and a frantic few final days in the state legislature. And as this and that reopens in Colorado, why isn't anybody talking about the dog parks? What's the deal there? That's next. Colorado's legislature had a hot end to the session. No air conditioning in that building. When they're usually done with the session in early May, you don't notice it so much. The pandemic pause delayed the session, so it just wrapped up about an hour ago. It's toasty today. A lot happened down the home stretch that's going to impact just about every single Colorado. Here's politics guy Marshall Zellinger.
It's picture day at the Capitol.
3, 2, 1.
In the last few days, lawmakers added 2 more issues to your ever-growing November ballot. You'll vote on another sin tax. Should cigarettes and tobacco be taxed higher and nicotine be taxed at all? For instance, a pack of cigarettes is taxed 84 cents right now. If voters approve, it will more than double to $1.94. The new money would go to rural schools, preschool, and tobacco education programs. You'll also be voting on a repeal of the Gallagher Amendment. Should voters approve this, home property tax rates will not go down like they're supposed to, meaning the schools, police, fire departments, and libraries that rely on that property tax money won't necessarily receive fewer dollars. That vaccine bill that would make it more difficult to opt out passed. And unlike what was in the bill last week, residents will not be able to collect signatures to try to stop it from taking effect. The bill still allows students to not be vaccinated, but requires a doctor's note, or if it's for religious reasons, the parent can take an online course educating them about vaccines. This vaccine bill does not impact homeschool students. Takeout and delivery alcohol from restaurants was okayed and sent to the governor, but it was watered down. Instead of allowing restaurants this added revenue source for 2 years like originally planned, the new competition for liquor stores only lasts until next July. And those old new green license plates that were going to come back starting no sooner than January are now coming back no sooner than January 2023.
I know there's a lot of people that are going to be bummed about the license plate thing. There are 36 days that were left in the legislative session because they have 120 days, and the Colorado State Supreme Court said it didn't matter which 120 days. So it's a little odd. They only spent 3 weeks on this stuff. It's possible, Kyle, that if the governor's not happy enough with what's done, he could call a special session. But they left time on the table, but they acted this weekend like there was no time.
Yeah, there's a frantic finish, and then, oh, okay, all right, we're going to cut it off there. But more importantly than the legislation that's going to change lives in Colorado, Marshall, I noticed that you have a new home studio background.
This is going to make it easier for the heart attacks that I give you and the producer when I'm running really fast down the stairs to the old home studio that is now covered in moving boxes.
Ah, very good, very good. Marshall on the move, as always. Thank you, sir. Colorado needs contact tracers. Let's look at what the job entails and what it pays. You know what a trip to the dog park entails. What we couldn't figure out is why they're still closed. That's next. You'd think that a big outdoor area where people pretty much keep to themselves to avoid small talk with strangers would be the perfect place to reopen at this stage with COVID-19 in Colorado. But dog parks are still closed in Denver. The city pointed us to the CDC guidance, which is still sorting out whether animals can transmit COVID-19 to humans. The CDC recommends that pet owners limit their pets' interactions with people outside their home. City of Denver tells us dog park closures are intended to follow that guidance. If they hold this line until we get more research, who knows when Denver's dog park's going to reopen, because animal to human transmission is not exactly one of the more studied and more frequently updated issues within the pandemic. If you're looking for a summer job that'll let you tell some interesting stories someday, Colorado is looking for so-called disease detectives. These are the contact tracer jobs we've talked about. People who will track down folks who have been in contact with somebody who has COVID-19, give them a friendly heads up. The job sounds like it's making a lot of phone calls and sweet-talking people into telling you if they have any symptoms and then delivering that news that they should go get tested or that they should self-isolate. This is an AmeriCorps job, so they do not have to pay Colorado's minimum wage. Contact tracers in our state will get paid about $8.40 an hour and will be eligible for an end-of-summer service stipend. You have to be at least 18 years old, high school degree or equivalent, and you will be working remotely. Good thing.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you're having a great Monday and maybe finding some ways to stay cool. It was a hot one. We hit into the low 90s once again for today. And with that, we had the high wind. So we're still under red flag warnings for much of the state until 8 o'clock this evening. And those are back once we get into tomorrow as well. A couple of storms are possible in that far southeastern corner tonight, but not anticipating anything severe. Otherwise, overnight, mostly clear skies down into the upper 50s. And then tomorrow, I think we've got a chance of breaking the record here in Denver with a high of 96 degrees. Once again, strong winds, so we are going to be dealing with high fire danger and possibly even 1 or 2 real isolated storms on tap for tomorrow as well. The heat sticks around through Wednesday, and then finally by Thursday and Friday, those temperatures are back down closer to 80 degrees, and that brings back in a chance for storms as well.
I think the legislature rapped because they didn't want to be in a 96-degree building. We return with a letter from somebody who asked me to tell you that they love you. That and your feedback next. Want to thank you for a second week of just overwhelming generosity in response to our Word of Thanks segment. You contributed $54,000 to the Crowley Foundation. It's a nonprofit that provides mentoring and leadership training to young black men in our community. The folks with the Crowley Foundation wrote a note and asked that I share it with you. It read in part, "We are amazed with the outpouring of love received from everyone who gave to the Crowley Foundation. Thank you does not feel appropriate. Instead, we will say, we love you, Denver." So that was week 2 of our group project, doing some good each Wednesday. So week 1, you funded the cleanup of Civic Center Park in Denver. Week 2, you greatly expanded that program to help young black men in our community. So what are we going to do together, $5 at a time, for week 3 of Word of Thanks? We'll have a new micro-giving group project every week, trying to make a real difference for a small to mid-sized nonprofit that's doing important work in Colorado. Beth writes in tonight to talk about the Stapleton neighborhood. Says, no matter what it is called, it will always be Stapleton to native Coloradans. You ever notice how people use the word native to say, like, here's my specific point-in-time viewpoint that I believe is held by everyone universally everywhere? Beth, I'm pretty sure that prior to it being called Stapleton Airport, when it was Municipal Airport, then that's what people called it. And my 2-year-old daughter is probably going to grow up and call it something different, and she's a native. So it might just be one little window of time.